Welcome to a new video. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. The first story is called, "You Want Me to Write Down the Numbers?" This happened when I was still working in installation engineering. My boss had the habit of using draftsmen like me as project managers since we were cheaper than the engineers usually doing that kind of work. Amazingly, he's not the biggest jerk in this story. One of my first tasks in this involuntary role was to do on-site measurements at a large building site. At sites this big, it isn't unusual to do on-site measurements in pairs. Someone from the contracted company and someone from the contracting entity, so nobody can cheat or make errors. One takes the measurements and the other person writes them down. In the end, these notes will be the basis for the final bill. Anyways, the person from the contracting party at this project, a middle-aged man, seemed to have it in for me from the get-go. I don't know if he was bothered by my age or the fact that I didn't know a huge building site I was assigned days earlier like the back of my hand. In any case, he really didn't like it when I asked him to clarify something. Which happened a lot. Not only didn't he say what he was measuring at the moment and, for example, if he meant the diameter or length of a pipe when he blurted out 200. When he was counting instruments, he never said when he stopped with one kind and started with a different kind. And, to top it all off, he also did all his calculations while speaking out loud. Basically, he was uttering numbers non-stop and expected me to know which of them I should write down. I asked him to clarify quite a few times before he bawled at me if I'm too stupid to simply write down the numbers he tells me. Nope. At that point, I already had decided to quit and only waited for fall to roll back around to enroll back into school. So be it. He says numbers. I write them down. Every single number. I'm pretty sure from the quantities written down by me after 4 hours of him mumbling across the compound like some malfunctioning Count Von Count, we could have built a functioning Mars colony. When the boss of the guy called the next week after looking at the novel of a bill, I explained that I wrote down exactly what he told me, without clarifying questions. Just as this guy had asked me to do. My boss and me met a week later with a different guy and redid everything as far as possible. Some parts were already covered by suspended ceilings. We crossed out the most blatant errors in those parts. Sadly, my boss loved that. In any case, I hadn't had to deal with that guy again before leaving the company. I count that as success. The next story is called, 3-day minimum sick days to get paid. So, I only recently found this out, completely by accident as well. Well, strictly speaking, 3 of my colleagues found out the hard way. So everyone's favorite day arrived last week. Payday. But to the shock of some of the guys here, they had some deductions in pay. As their manager, I was unaware of what this was, which is not unusual as companies and bosses love to mess around with policies and then keep it secret like it's a nuclear launch codes or something. I went to query why 3 of my guys had large chunks of pay taken from them, seeing as they work harder than most of the upper management and know more about the company than they do. To no one's surprise whatsoever, there had been a change in company policy that was yet to be released in the form of a memo but was in effect as of several weeks prior. I am upper management by the way, but I started at the bottom and worked my way up. I spend a lot of my time on the floor with the guys doing the actual work to give them the help needed and occasionally speak to difficult customers because they don't get paid enough to deal with that. I, on the other hand, could not care less about the entitled pricks who abuse my staff. So it's fun to tell them to get lost. Also, meetings are dull and my time could be better spent helping my guys and girls than discussing the financial benefit of changing the color of our logo from purple to magenta with rose infusion for 4 hours. So I go and have a little chat with human resources about what is going on. It turns out that there is a new policy that means if you take just a day off, then you will not get any sick pay. But if you have 3 days off in a row, then you do. But what makes this even better is this new policy is company-wide, meaning it affects everyone, no matter what position you are in. Alright then, so be it. So let's just skip forward to today. As of this point, everyone now knows about this new policy. There was a memo sent out on Monday morning, which I made sure was forwarded to everyone's personal emails, just in case. I and a rather larger than normal percentage of people have called in sick as of Monday and it looks like everyone got some kind of virus that will take at least 3 days to go away. Funny that. It's currently the morning on a Tuesday and I won't be in till Thursday. Just like everyone else, because obviously, the slight headache I had yesterday will take a while to go away. Though I am keeping an eye on the company emails. There are a lot of other managers who are not happy with this new policy either. It's almost like people don't like it when you mess with their pay. The third story is called, Sure, Will Not Dump Any Sand in the Water. This happened to a family friend years ago. This guy, who we'll call Mike, had just purchased a new home on a large island connected to the mainland by a bridge. Now, because of where this island is situated, it is comprised almost entirely of granite. This meant that all the shores surrounding the island were incredibly rough and abundant with sharp rocks. Mike did not care for this. Mike wanted a beach. So Mike calls up a local quarry and requests a truckload of beach sand. The same kind that was under the rocks on the island. He has it delivered and dumped on his property in front of the shore. One of his neighbors had noticed this, figured out what he was doing, and reported him to the township. The township was not too happy with this. Now this township has strict bylaws when it came to renovating the shoreline, dumping sand, etc. It required an endless amount of forms and permits that cost quite a few nickels, and would almost always be declined without reason unless you may or may not have been friends with someone in the office. Mike had received a notice the day after his neighbor reported him, stating that if he dug up the shoreline, or dumped any sand into the water without filling out the paperwork, that he would be heavily penalized and be forced to pay for the cleanup as well. So, being the law-abiding citizen he is, he went to the office, paid the fees, waited a week and had his permit declined without reason. Knowing this was most likely going to happen, he had already extensively gone over the bylaws and noticed that only the act of dumping into the water was illegal. Nothing about the shores, the banks, or anything except dumping directly into the lake. Mike then waited a few months until winter, when the lake froze over, then simply pushed all of his sand onto the ice with a tractor, and waited a few more months for spring. The ice melted, and the sand fell nicely into place over the beach. Township tried to fine him and was unsuccessful as they had no laws regarding dumping on the ice, only in the water. The law was changed the next year. The last story is called, Don't Be Late. So this takes place back in high school around the year 2002. Not a huge satisfying scenario, but it sure felt like it back then. I was enrolled in a private high school back in the day. This means two things. Basically, they can make up whatever rules they want since they aren't governed by the state, and it means that most of the kids didn't live in the neighborhood the school was located in. Personally, I lived about 25 minutes away from school. Which, coupled with the fact that I wasn't a very organized person, meant I had trouble making it to school by the time the first bell rang. Well, our school really wanted to crack down on lates. They eventually adopted a system where if you were late 3 times, you were awarded detention. After 3 detentions, you received an in-school suspension. The punishment definitely didn't fit the crime, at least in my opinion. Another caveat to this scenario is that I didn't have my driver's license yet. So when I got my first detention, my dad had to adjust his day by 90 minutes to accommodate picking me up later after school. Especially since I had a younger brother who was dismissed at a normal time. So, he had to pick him up, wait an hour or so, then come back for me. I eventually earned my second detention for being late, and my dad did not appreciate doing the whole extended pickup again. So cue a few weeks later and I've already racked up another 2 lates. Then one morning I was rushing around trying to get ready and imploring my dad to get there on time, because if I didn't, I would get the 3rd detention and an in-school suspension. To which he replied, okay, so what's the consequence for being absent? Well, nothing I guess. Well, if we're going to be late, I'll just call in and tell them you'll be absent today instead. So from then on, if we were ever running late, my dad would call the school and inform them I wasn't going to be there. My dad did things like this all the time. And he didn't care because, frankly, he didn't like most of their rules either, and I was a good student. So, in turn, I got a couple of weeks' worth of days off by the time the school year was over. And 16-year-old me couldn't be happier. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.